Hi, my name is Al Green. Not that one, but the struggling guy who was in the music industry for years trying to sell talent and songs to agents. The agents befriended me and taught me techniques that I want to pass on to you through my program, which is called You Can Talk, You Can Sell. Anyone who has ever taken this program has excelled in selling and either risen to the top of their company, their team, or the top of their field. It's called You Can Talk, You Can Sell, and you can get it right here. Are you completely aware of the secret language that you speak just by being yourself? That language might not have anything to do with who you are, but rather what you're experiencing that day. Let me tell you a little story about my favorite consultant I used to work with. Her name was Judy. That's all you need to know for now. Judy was a very professional, top salesperson. But Judy had a problem, and that was she had a tumultuous lifestyle simply because of the kind of dangers that existed in the world at the time. Now, it's understandable that if Judy had anything happen to her that was, say, catastrophic, great, she would take time off. But what she didn't realize was during all of her problems that she had, which was not financial, but they were emotional. She had a son that had emotional problems, another one that was autistic, and she had a lot to deal with. She couldn't seem to focus when these problems became overwhelming for her. So what did she do? She went about her business. She never let it bother her, but she developed an insensitivity towards others, which is something you have to think about. Because Judy was an absolute pro. She was dressed, she looked good, she was very corporate looking, and she was doing business to business with some of the most powerful brokers that represented her company. And she was always brought into the big sales meetings where only the executives were invited. She was great. But one day, she happened to visit a customer who, 10 minutes before her appointment, that customer had just gotten some very devastating news. Not devastating news that would affect her job where she'd have to leave immediately, but something that upset her. And that customer was told that there were imposters that were posing as salespeople going around to companies trying to steal orders from the company that Judy worked for, which is a company I worked for at the time. Now, that's kind of an interesting thing, but what happened was Judy came into the office to meet this female representative for the first time, and the female representative looked at Judy. She had her name badge on. She was prepared with her business card. She had a notepad so she could take notes right away. And Judy started to talk to this customer who, let's say, her name was Mary, okay, just for the heck of it. And what happened was Judy started the conversation, and Mary listened to her, and Mary began to ask the questions. Tell me about your product and your company. Not knowing that Mary was testing her, Judy responded in kind. And then what happened was, out of the blue, Mary did something that was completely surprising to Judy. She said, May I see your badge? Which is not a big deal. So Judy takes off her badge. She unclips it from her lapel and she hands it to Mary. And Mary looks at it and she turns it over and she says, excuse me, how do I know that this is a real badge from your company? Interesting question. Now, Mary was very sharp because she's now suspectful of anybody that shows up and claims to be from our company. Judy was not prepared for this. Normally, as sharp as a tack, she said, well, let me have you call my supervisor. And she wrote down a telephone number on her business card and she handed it to her. And Mary, in the most suspectful voice, says, you know, anybody can print a business card to make it look like they work for a company. And in fact, I know artists that could make badges just like this. This doesn't look to be authentic to me. So Judy, in the long arm of her mind, is trying to struggle for how to handle it. So Mary says, you know what, I can call your company to find out who you are. And Judy replies with, well, you can call my company, but there are 5,000 people that work there. If you call the main number, they're not going to know me. I work for a small division inside of my state. What you're going to reach is a national number. They don't know who we are. So Mary says to Judy, take your badge. Here's your business card. I don't believe you are who you say you are. Now get out of my office and leave the premises or I will call security. Judy completely is flabbergasted by this. So she does as suspected, and she hurriedly leaves the building, not worrying about what's going to happen to her because she hasn't done anything wrong at all. She was there innocently doing her job, but she was not prepared for the fact that there are other things at work that had nothing to do with her that could upset her. Now let's just say that nobody could make that sale, nobody could recover, and my showing up only had Mary question me because I went after the fact and I said to Judy, there are legitimate people that are out there and we are working against people that are falsifying information. How can I prove to you that we are the legitimate thing? And this woman, Mary, looks at me and she goes, you can't. And I said, you know what, Mary, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I walked out. Now, as I was driving back with Judy in my car, we were both talking. And I said, let's go grab a cup of coffee. We went for coffee and we sat down and I said, what the heck happened in there? And Judy told me the story that Mary had said. Somebody called her and said, somebody is imposters. Somebody is being imposters pretending to be from our company. And they have very real looking badges. And they also have business cards. And they look legitimate, but they're not the legitimate thing. And they're showing up trying to take orders from our company. And Judy had gotten a phone call from somebody. And she told me, this is Judy, not Judy got the phone call, Mary got the phone call. And she told Judy, as Judy relayed the story to me, that she was suspected of being the imposter, not the real thing. And that basically Mary told her to get out of her office. So what happens when that happens, okay? Judy was so caught up in this because she didn't know that her own agenda kept her so mentally occupied that she didn't have the right comeback, she didn't have the right response, and all the proof in the world was not going to convince this unsuspecting situation with a suspecting client who decided beforehand that Judy was an imposter. And this was a situation that was so hard to deal with, it just couldn't even be reckoned with. So we had to let it go, and I basically said to Judy, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to close that company. It's just not going to happen. But we need to be aware that this kind of thing is happening, and I'll take this to our legal department to find out if there's some way that we can publish a letter to our potential clients to prove who we are and how you are sanctioned and you are authorized and you are certified to be doing what you're doing. Judy was so upset at this that all the emotion that she'd been containing from the things that are happening in her personal life seemed to came forward, and she started to break down. And as she was in tears, there was nothing I could say to console her, except for things happen, and I'm sorry, Judy, listen, you didn't do anything wrong. And then Judy started to tell me about all the personal problems that she was having. And I said, would you like to take this to HR and we can talk about this? Our company was big enough, believe it or not, where we had psychologists that were on a helpline. And I said, let's call them. Let's see if we can get you some assistance. And I turned it over to the other department. But what I learned from this was that no matter how high you think you are, you don't know how somebody could do that one little trigger that could upset you. And what is the secret language that I'm talking about? The language of putting on a good face, like as salespeople, that's what we do. We start and we come out at the top, but inside we might feeling like we're at the bottom. So what is that saying? It's saying we need to center ourselves as salespeople. One of the most important things, so that there are no surprises. And we don't let our personal life get in the way. If you're having a hard time in your personal life, which happens to all of us, maybe it's time to take a day off or to go to somebody in your company to express that you really need to deal with some personal things that's getting in the way of your job, which maybe it isn't, but you want some time to reflect and get some assistance. But are you totally prepared for any situation that can come up? Most of us cannot. We're not ready. We don't know what's coming around the corner, and we're ill prepared. So how is it some people can handle anything and some people can deal with it and other people just cannot? We have to feel for those people. We're all human. We're all in this game together. We're all doing the same thing, but we have to deal. And we don't want to give off any vibes that we're vulnerable. Maybe there was something that Judy was doing. Maybe it was in her posture that Mary felt didn't look sincere. And Mary intuitively read the body language and saw, maybe this isn't a real person from the company. These kind of things that could happen. Investigate yourself. Find out, are you completely at the top of your game? These are the kind of things we're covering in my system, the six-figure selling system, where I take the average person who's in sales or consulting, and I show them how to maximize their sales using my system. And I hope you'll join me there.